Are there any changes or additions to the agenda as presented?
Nat, you wanted to talk about the letter of support for NVU. Would you think that's part of our NVU update, or do you think that's something that should be its own topic?
I was thinking about speaking to it then. I will be asking the board, I guess, for an action to support the idea that we do that, move forward with it. And I leave that up to you and Eric, whether you think that's a different agenda item or not.
I think we could pull it in under that NVU update. It seems appropriate.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I wanted to suggest that I'm glad we have Charles here. I want to suggest the recent flurry of activity in the legislature is time for us to move forward on broadband and think what actions we might benefit our community at this point, and tell you what's happening.
Okay, so we'll have that. Is there anyone else with any additional items?
I wanted to discuss, after the pandemic is over, perhaps continuing to have our meetings available by video or phone for people who don't want to be present or find difficulty being present.
Do you want to have that discussion now, or, I mean, I'm not sure if there's value in having a discussion now, but if you want to bring that up, we can.
Yeah, I'll bring it up.
Okay. Meetings. Anyone else? Okay. With that, is the board prepared to approve the meeting minutes for April 20th?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Brian, you're probably going to have to unmute Rosemary.
Yep. Okay, Rosemary, go ahead.
We have one set of orders that was around $8,000. If you want to authorize Eric to sign those.
What's the board's pleasure?
I move we authorize Eric to sign the orders that have been presented to us this evening.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Rosemary, what are the benches that were purchased for almost $1,200?
The Recreation got a grant for those to put along the rail trail.
Okay, so it's a money in, money out?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? If you have those at the office tomorrow, I'll stop by and sign them.
Yeah, they're all ready for you. Also, Downtown Pizzeria and Moog's Joint, they've got extensions on their liquor licenses, and they'll be
I'm not
presenting
catching
those.
you, Rosemary.
Oh. The Moog's Joint and Downtown Pizzeria got extensions from the liquor control on their liquor licenses, and they'll be presenting those licenses at a later date.
Okay.
I think it's 90 days. And also, as of last week, our land records are live to the public for the last 20 years.
Good. Good.
We've had maybe 2 or 3 attorneys come in for the last couple of weeks looking at the records inside the office. Otherwise, they've been using that.
How does the public access that? Can that information be available to our citizens?
Yeah, it's on the town website. There's a link to it.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's all that I had.
Okay, anybody got any questions for Rosemary? If not, thank you, Rosemary. I guess we don't have a Brian's report on the first meeting of the month. So we'll jump into Brian Story's report, administrator's report.
Okay. So first item up is I'm working on recertification of the closed landfill on Wilson Road. That's not due until September, but we would normally have begun the process already, and that's been delayed. The start has been delayed due to the pandemic. So we're a little, I think we're going to be okay. I think everything's going to move forward on that. And I don't anticipate any changes to it. It's just a recertification process. Though some of their engineers will go through our prior records and make decisions if they're going to relax anything. But we're pretty well meeting their projections. So I don't really anticipate any changes.
Okay. Is there any action for us?
I would like your authorization to sign as the town's representative on this. The documents ask for the landfill owner, that being the town. So either myself or Eric to sign.
What's the board's pleasure?
Motion to authorize Brian to sign.
Second.
A motion and second, any discussion?
What information is in what you're signing?
Right now, it's just that we're seeking recertification.
Okay. When will this process end?
It has to be completed by September, or we'll have to file an extension.
Okay, but after that, I mean, is there a point in time where we will not be involved in this any longer?
I certainly hope so. I hope through the process I'll have a better understanding of that, Doug, and I hope I can speak to that at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, how many years that dump been closed now?
That's
25?
been, yeah, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But at this point, the soil testing that we're doing is still turning up not a lot of contaminants, but some, and the values are still changing. They're generally decreasing over time, but there's still some instability there and some contamination there. So I'm almost positive that they're going to not, just extend out our current testing and make us keep up with it for the time being.
Okay,
But there'll be another date in the future where we go through this again.
okay.
Any other discussion? If not, authorizing Brian to sign. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, next one.
All right. Lamoille Regional Solid Waste Management District has made a suggestion about the compost fees that we're charging. Right now, there's a startup in Johnson that's trying to get off the ground for picking up and reselling compost. And right now, the fee that they pay for dumping compost is $35. We receive $15 of that. And they're wondering if we would consider reducing our fee.
On this one startup company?
I would not recommend, if we're considering it at all, that we would do it for one company. I would say that if we're going to consider it, we would do it wholesale.
When is that contract up that we negotiated with them?
For the compost, that's got a couple more years on it. I'd have to pull the contract to be certain, but it's not all that soon.
Right. I mean, that was quite a process we went through to negotiating with a lot of give and take back and forth. What's the board's thoughts?
Are they thinking about reducing their fees across the board also, or is it just our portion?
They did not say. I can follow up with them on that, but they didn't volunteer that they would be reducing their fee.
If the idea was to encourage a startup, that might be, you know, I don't know if we're across the board for startups or across the board for everyone. And I would think we'd want to know what their actually pricing framework would be and maybe why.
I asked Brian Story recently, a few months back, how much we collected in those composting fees. And I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but I was surprised by how little money it actually amounts to. I don't know if, Brian, you have a sense of what that is.
If you give me a moment, I can pull up the most current quarter, and it is quite low.
Well, that being a winter quarter?
Winter and the outbreak.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking if we looked at all of 2019, I thought it was less than, well, I don't want to put a number out there, but I didn't think it was very much.
No, not much at all.
Of course,
Let's see.
the
Quarter
mandatory,
one, it was 43 tons.
Say that again, Brian, please.
43 tons for quarter one.
Oh, yeah, but again, I don't think that's a good representation of it. I mean,
Quarter one, at least part of it was the regular season. So it's quarter two and quarter three is probably going to be even less than that.
but July 1st is mandatory composting, right?
There's a lot of discussion about modifying that. A lot of waste haulers and the district are requesting an extension before mandatory composting comes in.
But we would anticipate the total tonnage will be greater once that mandatory composting is implemented.
Yeah, all things being equal, we would with the schools. They say that the majority of the contribution normally comes from the college and the elementary schools. And I believe that they get a contribution from the studio center as well. With those shut down, their contribution is quite low. So they're not receiving much material currently.
But
and for the time being, that's going to be true.
but they receive from a lot more than just Johnson. It's the whole district.
Yeah, but from what I understand, a lot of the agriculture already has their own arrangements, so that they're mostly getting from institutions, and the biggest institutions around being the schools and the higher education and the secondary education.
Okay.
And they're both closed for the time being, and we're not sure when they're opening up again.
Right, yeah, we can't use the data from this quarter, but the restaurants in Stowe, are they going to agricultural or are they coming here?
A mix. We're getting some of them, but we're not getting as much as they had anticipated. Mandatory is going to change that. But, that's where people like I think it's Regreen is the company's name. People like Regreen are trying to take advantage of that, is that they can presumably collect and then bring compost here.
Okay.
Okay, so on January 1st, I asked Brian how much we collect. And the email I got back from him was it's working out to be about $400 a year.
So
And if
400.
that's, and I'd like to double check that to see if that's true. But if it was, then I don't even know why we're asking them for that. I wouldn't mind at least a discussion about getting rid of it altogether. $400 a year is,
Well, it's not so much that it generates a lot of revenue for us, but it's supposed to reflect the wear and tear on our roads, in particular on Wilson Road,
Yeah.
for the haulers coming in and out.
I understand.
So if they're not receiving a lot, they're not putting a lot of wear and tear on our road, and so we're fine not receiving a lot for that in compensation, because they presumably haven't done as much damage to the road.
And our
You say leave
original,
well enough alone.
our original thought was this is serving the whole district, which even goes beyond the county into Woodbury and those kind of places. And the thought was that Johnson taxpayers shouldn't be subsidizing something that benefits the whole district and not just Johnson. If it was just Johnson alone, yeah, why would we charge anything? Because they pay for the roads anyhow. But go ahead, Mike.
Leave well enough alone.
What does that mean, Mike? Just
Leave it the way it is.
exactly how we have it?
Yes. Like Eric said in the beginning, you remember all of the hoops we had to jump through just to negotiate that contract. And it's almost like changing horses midstream. Again, I say just leave it the way it is. I don't think that fee is going to make or break anybody, to tell you the truth.
I'd still like to know what they intend to do with their fee structure for a startup. You know, they're asking us, what are they doing? Would they extend this to other startups? What are they doing? I think when we felt, you know, Eric enunciated our rationale, I think we pulled the number out of the sky. There's, you know, on principle, I don't think that we have any basis for determining this is the wear and tear on our roads for this. It was principle. So that might counsel just staying with Mike's position, or I'd like to know more about what their pricing thing is going to be.
I guess I just don't want to make it into a big project because it's just not worth it.
But I agree.
Fish to fry.
I don't think it would be a big project for me to send Susan an email and ask her, you know, what are you doing with your, you know, they're getting the balance of it. It's $35. They get 20. We get 15. I can ask her what she's thinking about doing, and
Yeah,
you know,
why don't you go ahead and do that and then bring it back to us.
yeah, we don't have to take any specific action other than that.
Knowing them, we drop it to 25, they'd still keep 20 and give us 5.
That's I think the suggestion is, you know, if they're also putting something forward, maybe we'd receive it a little bit more favorably.
Brian, could you also find out if we are talking about Regreen Vermont?
That is the company that they mentioned.
It is, okay.
But again, I would counsel against defining this on one company.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
For us, it should be flat fees or not.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a comment in the chat, Brian, if you want to.
Yep. If we're ready to take a comment from the chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, go ahead, Kim.
I just wondered if you could do it on a percent so that you're just taking a percent of what they make, and if they're not making a lot, you're not taking a lot.
We effectively do that by taking a percent based on the tonnage. Or not a percent, but taking a fee per ton. So if they're not taking in a lot of goods for composting, we don't receive a lot of money for it. So they have to be doing a pretty good turn of business before we start to see any income from that. And again, we didn't, I believe that we did a very rough back of the envelope kind of estimating, but I think we did do a little bit of estimating on the damage that it might cause, about, how much would a project on Wilson Road cost, and, if we had to do that more often. I think we had a little rationale of how we came up with $15, but it was not a great scientific study. It was just, back of the envelope calculation based off of a prior project on the same road.
I mean, would you say $400 a year?
Yeah.
That doesn't even pay for the grading of the road.
No. But
Yeah,
presumably if we're only receiving $400 a year, that means they're getting about 25 tons.
Yeah.
And if they're only getting about 25 additional tons, that's not a lot of trucks, and that's not contributing a lot to the wear and tear on the road. So we don't need to receive a lot of them in that circumstance.
Okay. Were there any other comments?
No.
Okay. Unless the board wants to take any action on that, we'll move on. We did ask you, Brian, to follow up on that one question. Okay. Marvin Awards.
All right, so the Marvin Awards are coming up soon, and LCPC would like to know if we're going to make any nominations. So I'd open it up to the board first, and then I do have a suggestion that came in. Does anybody have anything that they're really eyeing for an award?
For community service, I was reflecting on how much Lois Fry has done for the community, especially in her work with the Conservation Commission as really a founding member or the founding member, I'm not sure. So I think that would be a good one.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I thought of her too.
Beard Swimming Hole and Kokomo and Journey's End, all these projects really led by Lois.
Good.
They also looking for a project?
Yeah,
Sure.
they're always interested in projects also, and that's actually where I had a suggestion from the public about Legion Field and the developments there, between the bandstand and the bread oven and the ice rink in the winter, that we're getting a lot of kind of renewed use of that park.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, but it wasn't well planned.
No, that's
It just happened. That wasn't a result of great planning.
yeah, that's kind of my. We can easily write a letter that talks about how great it is. Our planning process on how it arrived that way is a little harder to write.
Yeah, no plan.
Yeah.
Our plan is no plan.
What has Northern Vermont University received in terms of Marvin Awards recently?
For the art building, I think was the last one they received. They had the reception up there.
Have they done any new projects, buildings?
I think they haven't done building projects, but they've done the conversion to Northern Vermont University, which was a massive project that in terms of rebundling themselves and propagandizing, and I don't know if that falls into any categories, but they are an organization that could use any boost that they can get.
I could see writing an award for that in a couple ways. You know, for the person that could go in for, you know, Elaine Collins for, you know, kind of steering the ship through the transition and leading the two campuses. For the, what did we do for facilities last year? I think we had another, I think we could do facilities for the unification. And I think we did something similar when we nominated for facilities last year, that we had a little bit of an abstract for the facilities nomination.
We didn't get one last year, right?
Last year, we nominated, did we nominate Eric?
Romero,
Yeah.
didn't they?
Yeah,
I
for
think
the,
Romero was the year before,
Yeah.
and I think last year was Eric.
but we haven't had,
Elementary win something?
Say
we haven't
again?
had,
Hyde Park Elementary, didn't they, was that 2 years ago already, or was that last year?
I don't remember that.
Oh, maybe I dreamt it. No, I,
Oh, well, I don't remember. It doesn't mean it didn't happen.
yeah. Thought they did.
When is it due?
We did dominate the NVU unification as the facilities for last year.
Okay.
and it wasn't accepted then?
It was accepted as a nomination, but it didn't win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try it again.
Yeah, we can nominate them again. I mean, it's still been, to our eyes, a very successful ongoing project.
Well, last year would have been appropriate to nominate the concept of unification. This year would be appropriate, I would think, to nominate the person who was driving it behind it, and that would be Elaine. I mean, it's already happened, so I don't know if 2 years ago, would we nominate the unification itself? It's sort of stale now.
Yeah, I think we've had our three strikes on that one.
When's the deadline for this, Brian?
The deadline for this is pretty much, we want to have something coming out of this meeting. Let me see.
Doug, all we can see is your fuzzy hair.
I'm lucky I have what you see. I was pretty comfortable.
April 14th.
April 14th.
Yeah. Or, excuse me,
Man,
been extended. It was April 14th, but it was,
Okay, so if we, they must have did an extension then.
it was extended, and I apologize for that. But we do want to come out of this meeting with the nomination.
There was,
Well-
yeah. Jenna's promise is a suggestion from the crowd.
Yeah, I was about to suggest that too. I think that NVU is stale at this point. I think Lois and Jenna's promise.
yeah, I can agree with Jenna's promise.
So Lois and Jenna's promise, everyone feel comfortable with that?
Oh, yeah, extremely.
Yeah, I was thinking of Jenna's promise in terms of after they'd, been up and running for a minute, especially with the Barrows House reconstruction, which is amazing. But we could Definitely do that now for sure.
We'll be nominating them for facilities. So we'll be nominating the church specifically.
Which they are doing good project, a
Yeah.
good amount of headway in there already.
They
Yeah.
are.
And if we're happy with what they do with the Barrows building too, we can nominate that as that's a new project, a new facility.
That could be next
their
year.
nomination.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, why don't we go with those two then?
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, I just had one more thought is, can you nominate businesses? I'm thinking about Moog's Joint.
We can nominate Moose Joint.
They really brought that place back to life, and it's been wildly popular. It's an idea.
What's everyone's thoughts? That is a completed project. Jenna's Promise is not completed yet.
Mhm.
There's a question in chat of can we nominate more than one? I don't know that they would not accept multiple nominations, but it would not, it would really weaken the two nominations. I don't think that they would be likely to win if we can't pick one from our own community. I don't know that they're going to pick one for us.
Right. Because we're still going up against every other town in the county.
Yeah.
I would go with Jenna's Promise.
Yeah, same here.
Great.
Okay, I guess we'll go forward with Jenna's Promise then, and Lois.
Okay. Thank you.
Building permit.
All right. So you've got a draft of this. Here, I think for everybody's benefit, I can share my screen so that we can see this and kind of the audience can read along with us. So we've got, per our discussion about building permits, I looked up the town of Rutland has an example that's very similar to what we discussed, where they have a building permit that has no, not prescriptive at all. There's no zoning tied to it. It's just inform the town of construction that would impact the grand list, more or less. So you've got a copy of their permit ordinance there. Kind of the key sections for this, what requires a permit and exemptions from the permit, and then how to apply. So I took that and started with our own. Here, so this is our first draft. And our permit required is pretty similar, but a little bit more permissive than theirs. So no building or structure of any kind, including but not limited to houses, garages, and sheds, outbuildings, retail and or commercial structures, as well as an enlargement or addition that increases the footprint of an existing structure, shall thereafter be constructed or installed within the town limits unless an informational permit is first obtained. And it also goes on to say an informational permit is required for an alteration of an existing building or structure that results in an increase in the number of bedrooms. So converting an older large home into a rental property, you often alter the number of bedrooms for that. Likewise, if you're converting it, you might increase or reduce the number of bedrooms you've got. So that is required sometimes. Then I had some thoughts about something for commercial. The example I was trying to capture was when you're turning a personal garage into a service garage, that does change the valuation of the building, but I couldn't come up with any language that I was satisfied for that. So I think that might be one that we can continue to think about, or we might strike it from entirely. Then we go on to the exemptions. For an informational permit, I'm not sure that we want to provide any exemptions. So I think I want to strike this section. This is not one that I want to copy from theirs.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm not sure what the intent was of Rutland's, but our intent would be whatever would change the assessed value of the property is what we're trying to capture. So one thing we should have it run by our assessors to make sure we haven't forgotten anything. And obviously, if somebody's going to build a sandbox for their kids, that's not going to change the assessment of the property. But if they're going to, double the size of their homestead, that would, and we would want to make sure those kind of permits are captured.
All right. So we might change the language a little bit into that permit required section 1, because it is fairly expansive in that it, says no building or structure of any kind. So it's.
I mean, that's my thought. Is the intent of this is to capture what would change the assessed value. We're not looking to find out if somebody builds a tree house,
Yeah.
So I'm throwing it out there. Maybe other board members have some thoughts, but those are my thoughts.
That wasn't my intention when I was writing it, but when you say that, I think that would be captured by this language. I don't think this language would permit it without doing, without something like that. So I think I might revisit this line a little bit.
Right.
To try and get something that's slightly more permissive, but still. What I liked about this is it was easier to understand than Rutland. There was not really a judgment call. That a homeowner wouldn't have to make a judgment call on, is this something that requires a permit? And then if they guessed wrong, get hit with a fine later. The idea was that just go get a permit.
I agree. We want to make it really simple, black and white, sort of, like the form-based code, which is very simple to the average person to be able to understand.
Yep.
Rutland's ordinance starts out with a purpose, and they tie it to flood hazard areas, things that they regulate. And I'm wondering, and then their authority, that's their section 1. Section 2 has authority where they're promulgated, which presumably is like putting in E911 addresses and things like that. I'm wondering if our purpose is to provide information to our listeners so that they can find projects, whether or not we would use the same authority, or how we would state our purpose and where we would go in terms of authority for we are doing reconnaissance.
I have read the statutes cited in the authority. I'm pretty confident that we're going to cite the same, but our justification is going to be different. I would write our justification based on our prior conversations as our purpose for this is to assist our assessors to maintain an accurate grand list for the benefit of all residents. That one of the things that came up in our prior discussions was our concern about residents who were a little bit more visible, and so everything they did was getting captured, and so their assessment was very up to date and accurate. And then somebody else who built a house and didn't tell anybody, and we didn't know about it, so they're being, you know, they should be assessed higher, and they're not. You know, so that fairness question would be a big part of our purpose.
I think though that I believe that we ought to state that that's part of our purpose, and I think we ought to indicate where the town does have authority, you know, like highway cuts and things like that. But we need to be careful that when we get information from them, that we're not signing off and they think, well, oh, we've got all the permits we need. You know, some people may be confused about a municipal permit when it's the village permit, which is a municipality. We need to be very specific about that. This is informational for us and it's limited to, we're telling them that they need an E911, they need a highway cut, they need, I don't know, there are some flood hazard area zoning, things like that, and nothing beyond, you know?
That's a good point. Yeah. To your point, Doug, some of the things that Rutland has, we would probably want to capture as well. Like the curb cut. I mean, they still would have to have a curb cut permit, even now, if they were going to put a driveway in and connect to our highway. So,
and I think it's good to tie the tax stuff with that other, because the places where we do have authority, we would want to know, we would want them to know, and we want to know what they're doing for the fairness issue. Yeah.
So I'm trying to, I'm going to make that stand out a little. Trying to make that a little clearer.
You think we should have a definition section?
Yes, but before this is done, we need to have a definition section also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in that case, when we get to the informational permit, we really need to be careful to define what we're covering and what we're not covering. We're not saying that you are okay for WW Act 250, all of these other things, you know, or village zoning, because this is an entirely different thing than that.
So we would need a disclaimer in there. That, yeah.
I thought it was I wondered how they were going to do this, and I really liked the way they, you know, got a toehold and went with it, and I think it could be adapted for our needs.
Yes.
Like you're talking about.
Yeah, I thought the Rutland's policy was really good, and yeah, I borrowed very heavily from it.
I was surprised they didn't have zoning. Of course, this was 72, or when was it?
This they have some zoning, and yeah, their underlying ordinance is basically the same, but yeah, the permit application and a number of other things have changed quite a bit over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, did you see Scott Meyer's comment?
I did. Thank you. So under the section comment about permit requirements, Kim comments that you know, there's something for commercial, you know, that she thinks that might be something that we should include because of, again, like the example of turning a personal garage into a service garage would have an assessment value change.
Right. I agree.
Our listers ought to work. We ought to ask our listers what they see as resulting in what they want to know about.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Assessors. Sorry.
Let's see. Moving on to the next, well, I guess I'm kind of skipping over the exemptions, but again, I'm not seeing us having a great purpose for exemptions. The Rutland ordinance exempts building or structure with a footprint of less than 100 square feet and a vertical expansion of an existing building or structure not accompanied by an increase in the footprint or increase in the number of bedrooms. I think our justification and our interest in this is a little bit different in that we're primarily looking for that change in assessed value, and especially the vertical expansion would still result in a change in the assessed value.
Yeah, I
Agree.
agree. You got a question from Donna, I think.
Okay, let me.
We should unmute Donna, because if she has to interject, it might be
Yeah.
important. Not that other things aren't important, but
Yeah, we want to make sure she captures everything.
that's what I mean.
Okay, Donna, you're unmuted.
You there, Donna?
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
Well, Donna, we're not able to hear you.
I'm
I'm
talking.
talking.
Oh,
Yeah, she's saying in chat that she is saying, but no, she's definitely unmuted.
nothing's coming through.
Ask her if she can just go ahead and type it.
Sounds like a little mess.
Is that on her end or our end?
I can't really say. I mean, I don't have a lot of feedback here other than she's not muted.
Yeah.
But that's about all I can see about her system is that she's not muted. And the little activity icon is not checking off. So it's not getting any signal, I don't think. Okay, so she asks, is the sketch and utility info really needed for our purposes since we aren't going to approve or disapprove based on utilities? And I think that's a pretty fair point. My thought was about, again, this is going to be something where we want to get into a little better discussion with our listers, our assessors, is I was thinking that there would probably be a value or a difference in having a powered or an unpowered outbuilding. Maybe that's not necessary.
But they would know that when they go and do the site visit.
Yeah.
All we really are concerned with is a structure being built, whether it's got power in it or not.
We're also tying in the highway access permits, for which, this is kind of rather like a project review sheet rather than what you get for, they tell you if you have to get an Act 250, they tell you what your or a WW, this is really not the permit itself. We are asking them they ask us and we tell them. So there's a burden on us to be accurate. And therefore I think that you'd need enough information to advise them whether, as to what permits they're going to be required to get. You know, like the town highway access permit, it's its own form.
Yeah. That also makes us a little bit more useful also. If we can help them and give them a little bit of advice on who else do they need to go talk to? Rather than just being a speed bump on their way, we can contribute something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the concept I think of this, is we're telling them what the permit is, you know, where requirements are that we have and not the other ones.
Yeah.
You know, many people have no idea that they need a floodplain zoning permit. You know, so a sketch and information as to their location would be pertinent to that.
All right. Let's see, I had highlighted the existing regulatory permits and or approvals to which the property is subject, new permits and or prior permitting at the site. Since we don't have I'm not sure if the applicant provides this, because if they're gonna do any of the searching, we're probably gonna be involved anyway. Or if this is something we just do when we receive an application, that we do the search for it.
Don't you think one of our goals would be not to have to put too much administration time into this?
I think so.
Yeah.
I just think that I think that when they are finding out of what permits and what has gone on in the property before, who else are they going to ask? And where else are they going to get that information?
But we should be more of a general answering service, because we may not know all of who they need to go through depending on what they're doing and where they're located. I mean, we would know the local, you know, flood zone ordinances. We'd know the curb cut ordinances. We would know if it was within the form-based code zoning areas. But if there's some Act 250 requirement, we may or may not know about it. We don't want them to give them the impression that we're the one-stop shopping for them, that the clearinghouse for everything.
All right. So we'll leave that. I didn't strike it because I wasn't confident about it.
Yeah.
We get into enforcement, or sorry, the finish up what the application looks like. You know, that it's going to include the plot and an illustration. You know, we're looking at something pretty similar to what we get for the highway access permits, of not an engineer's drawing, but a descriptive drawing.
Yep.
You know, then item 5 gives us the authority to kind of make modifications to the application without having to redo the whole ordinance. And the authority to establish a fee schedule. Enforcement, we're just going with a standard set of fees. I don't think that this is I don't think that this is too punitive, but I think it's about right. You know, we're not looking to generate income off of this. It's just a little bit of teeth so that it's encourages people to do it and to work with us, but you know, it's not going to wreck anybody if they make a mistake on it.
Don't you think people will say, I built a 12 by 12 chicken coop and now I got to pay $200 because I didn't know I was supposed to give you notice of this?
Yeah, I think that's 100% the kind of thing that we're currently capturing is things like a chicken coop. So I think we're going to have to work with the assessors a little bit on maybe not strict exemptions, but tightening up this sentence of this section on what buildings and structures trigger. But we also want to manage it to be easy to be understood for an applicant or a reader so that we're not catching anybody by surprise.
Right. I thought portable structures weren't taxable.
I don't think they are.
So that, you know, that'll come out by talking to them.
Yeah.
Or true or not true, I don't know.
Well, you could have that chicken coop on wheels, so it wouldn't be taxed.
But it's got a roof.
So what? So doesn't a container, but you don't tax a container in somebody's yard.
Well, maybe you would if they bring one in.
That's the container house.
Yeah, if you move into the container.
But if you have a container, like a 20-foot container that you use for storage and is sitting on some 6x6 pressure treated, it can be moved out of there. So those aren't ever taxed. We don't want to go overboard here.
Yes, all I'm saying is the definitions are important.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to have to improve that sentence and write our definitions well to capture just the things we're trying to capture.
Donna asked about replacements for existing buildings. So if your shed falls down and you build one just like it, do you need a permit?
I believe that you do under our under the way this is written now.
But as we're going to make it, it's a very simple thing, 0 fee and 0 restrictions. All it would be is notifying us that they're rebuilding their shed that fell down.
They may have,
I was just going to add, then the assessors would probably check it the next spring and see if it's, you know, this one's got a floor in it and the other one was a dirt floor, something like that.
mhm.
But we need to run it through the assessors and we need to clean up some of the language. But this is a good first draft.
Yeah, this is just our first pass at it. This is not going to the attorney yet. This is not doing, we've got a lot more to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good start.
Last part is the permit itself. You know, trying to keep it small, light.
Yep.
And this would not actually be building permit. This would be building permit application, and then we'll have another form for the. I don't know if we'll have a separate form for the permit itself or.
I wouldn't call it a building permit.
What would you call it?
Application review, something. You know, just, you know, they think they'll have a permit.
Oh.
You know, all of these things are saying it's not the highway access permit. That's a separate thing.
That was a big change that we did have to make with the highway access. was that we found that there was a lot of misunderstandings when we had just one stage. When it was you made an application and we gave you a permit, that having that notice to proceed, so you make an application, we look over the application, if everything looks in order, we give you a notice to proceed, and then you get a permit once you've completed it. That's something we should definitely consider. What I was thinking about for this that didn't make it into the draft we've got today is adding a section underneath here that would be, for office use only, where we would give them a copy of this marking that it's received, and that would kind of serve as a notice to proceed. And then the actual permit would come later. But we might want to make it a more discrete steps like we've done for the access permit, the highway access.
Many of the activities that people are going to undertake are not going to require any permit whatsoever and are just going to serve as information for us.
Yeah. In the comments, Donna has a suggestion or a question about why not make less than 100 square feet exempt like Rutland does, as a way for us to just not have to deal with sandboxes and tree houses and other things that if it fits on a small enough footprint, we just don't want to get into it.
That's a good point.
And that's a good question to give to the assessors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
get
it's-
some guidance from them about at what size does it fall below notice?
Right.
Whether it's 100 square feet or we pick a different square footage, but if there's a particular size that we can say, if it's less than this many feet, we just don't care.
I have a friend who nationally makes tree houses for people who want to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Carl's looking for a tree house.
It's true.
We'll send the assessors over. You make sure you tell us.
I know, I'm taking notes.
But yeah, putting a minimum square footage on there might be a pretty convenient and again, easy to understand way of whether you need to file with us or not is everything that's attached, you've got to check with us if it's freestanding and it's less than, we could even set a smaller number. We could say, 64 square feet. Then you don't need to check with us.
I think this is all assessor questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, are we good with it for tonight?
Yep.
I'm going to add a little bit more if you'll be patient here. Okay. I got a couple notes for myself for later.
Okay, well, thank you. Good
Thank
job there.
All right, I'm going to end this screen share. I can start it up again if people are really interested, but I wanted to check. Okay.
Vicious dog update?
Yeah, the vicious dog update. We've got one person by phone, and I'm wondering if that is Casey or Armstrong's. I guess we'll find out as we go. We were hoping they'd be able to join us tonight. So the Armstrongs have filed a request with us for reconsideration. So this is not a formal appeal to our dog order. This request for reconsideration does go right to the select board, and it's, do you want to open up the hearing again and reconsider your prior order? New information from this in particular is, their claim that Asia is a service dog for Harriet, and that they are offering to try and make accommodations, and that is the Armstrong's number. That's not Casey. All right. So everybody's seen the request. Do we want to have any discussion?
What's the board's thoughts? This is a little bit unprecedented. Typically, we have a ruling, and then if there's an overrule, it's done by Superior Court.
Curious if the dog fits any definition of, any formal definition of service animal. The ADA has a definition of what a service animal is. Any information on the training that the dog has had to qualify it for?
Did they provide any of that, Brian?
We have not been provided with any certification.
The other thing I'm curious about is, were there fines issued for this dog?
I believe that there was a fine for having the dog running at large.
And has that been paid?
That would be paid to Superior Court, so
We don't
it
know.
hasn't made its way through Superior Court to us yet.
Thank you.
As a rule, service dogs are trained to be even-keeled and be able to go through most any kind of a situation, even like a kid's pulling its ears or somebody kicking it. They're trained not to retaliate. So I think you could just pull the word service dog out of the air here. I think that I think it should stick what we determined during the hearing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I was asking the question so as not to make any assumptions, but yeah, typically my understanding of a service dog is that typically it's trained as such that it wouldn't attack someone who's walking by on the road. And so I thought it was worth checking into that. So it's.
I said it for you, Nat.
You're more to the point than I am, Mike. Thank you.
Brian, when is the 30-day appeal up and for the dog to be euthanized?
That will be next week, May 10th.
May 10th. Has there been any attempt that you're aware of by the Armstrongs to appeal this to Superior Court?
This letter came to us by way of Superior Court. That Superior Court will not hear this as it constitutes a request for consideration and not a formal appeal.
So
that's why it's kicked back to us.
They first asked Superior Court to rehear this, which they had never heard it yet.
Right.
Okay.
That caused a little bit of confusion, but we got that sorted out in time for this meeting. They have been in contact. They're interested in filing an appeal. I've advised them to get in touch with legal aid for some assistance on making the appeal and getting it written properly. Because it is a very formal process that they have to follow.
And they do realize that the clock is ticking, and if they're not successful in getting that Superior Court appeal right off within the next, well, by next week, the dog would be euthanized, unless this board changes its order.
I believe that they're well aware of
Okay.
that, you know, based on our conversations.
And were they on the line tonight and wanted to say a few words?
They are.
You want to unmute them?
Okay. Harriet and Jim, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been listening to you. You know, I fell down the stairs out here Saturday. Jim didn't even know I was there for a half an hour, but if my dog had been there, I've got 2 broken ribs just laying there for half an hour and better because Jim was off doing something else. You don't call her a service dog. No, she's not been trained, but she's been with us so long that she knows. She goes right with us and stays with us, and you folks don't even know what she is. You just want to put her down because you don't want her in this fucking neighborhood. That's plain English. I've got somebody to give me a 100-foot chain link fence, and you can call him Ryan Wells. Ryan said he'd back that dog any day. He said she's just a little too aggressive. That's why I wanted to talk that guy up the kennel. That place up there. No. You're going to put my dog down and I won't have her either. You want to talk to Jim? Jim's right here. That dog's never hurt anybody if they don't hurt her. That woman kicked her. You're kicking a German Shepherd and she's a full blood. Hello?
Go ahead.
All I'm asking for is to give me a chance to contain that dog and give her a life that she deserves. She doesn't deserve to be killed. It was an accident, yes. And I think everybody deserves another chance.
Well, you do realize your other chance is the Superior Court, correct?
I understand that, but I don't have any money. That's the problem with this virus that's gone around. It's drained my savings account, drained my checking account. My store in Hardwick has been closed. We're in the same boat as a million other Americans.
And
all I'm asking for is just give me this one time to show you that I can contain that dog. That's all I'm begging.
You do realize your opportunity to plead your case was when the hearing was held. It was a duly warned hearing where each party is able to provide evidence, testimony, witnesses, and that would have been the proper course for you.
I've never been in this position before. I didn't know how to go about it. Everybody kept telling me different things. And they said I needed to get a lawyer, and I called a half a dozen lawyers. Legal aid won't touch it because it's not I don't know what they called it anyway, but all the other lawyers want $300, $400, $500 to start the case, and I just didn't have the money.
Well, you were served notice of when the select board was going to have its hearing. For that type of a hearing, you would not have needed legal counsel. You would not have needed any money. You would just needed to provide testimony and witnesses or evidence.
Well, I have the witnesses and I have the testimony and stuff, like I put in the word in the letter that I wrote to you folks. But I was always told from everybody, even the police when they was here, that I would need to hire a lawyer.
You will now, as I understand it, for Superior Court, but that is a proper route now, is to continue with Superior Court if that's what you want to do, is appeal our ruling. But the Select Board has already ruled, unless the Select Board decides tonight to change and have another ruling or another hearing, but that was the ruling of the Select Board.
Well, this is what I was asking for tonight, was to change the ruling for another meeting with the Select Board. Then I can show up there and present my evidence and stuff. See, I didn't know all this before.
Hey, Eric?
Go ahead, Doug.
I wanted to say that it's to his advantage to have an attorney, but he could represent himself. The problem is that people really aren't aware of the processes and stuff like that. But you have
That's my problem. That's my problem right there. I'm not aware of the processes and stuff.
Well, that then leads you to the solution for that might be an attorney, but I just wanted to correct that you are not required to hire an attorney to file an appeal, but you're probably better off with one.
Thank you, Doug. Does any other board members have any questions of either of the Armstrongs? Does the board want to take any action tonight?
No.
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 Okay, I'm hearing a consent of not taking any action on this. I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Armstrong, but the proper course for you is to go through the Superior Court.
Sorry, I muted them.
Okay,
You want the response or?
I don't think there is any response.
All right. So then we're moving on. So the COVID-19 response update. So wanted to give you an update on town operations and kind of how things are going. It's going pretty well. We've got things are a little bit tough for for folks with the changes that we're having to adapt to and kind of everything that's going on. We've got pretty much everybody back to work. We're working on 2 separate shifts, 2 separate projects. We're keeping, we're able to follow social distancing pretty well for folks when they're at work and when they're working outside. Some of the requirements are a little, we've got a little bit more pushback about wearing masks while at work when you might encounter other people. I'm not wearing mine right now because I'm the only one in the building and it's locked, so there's no opportunity for me to encounter other people, and everything will be washed and cleaned before anybody has an opportunity to come in contact with an area that I've been in. So that's, the mask is kind of the one that's been a little bit harder to swallow. We are working on, let's see, a couple of the things that came out of our meeting today for town operations would be, we're going to work with the village on coming up with a health plan and a safety and health return to work plan. So that we'll be dealing with when you come, kind of everything that is required when you're coming back to work, when you're doing the trainings, clear instructions on when you're going to wear a mask and when you're going to follow certain guidelines and procedures. Some assurances of when that that you need to wear personal protective equipment, and that we will provide it when we're able to. Let's see, from there, that plan was directed on Friday as part of the reopening. It's best practice for everybody to complete the plan. The plan is required for organizations with more than 10 employees and organizations that have been that were shut down for 7 or more days. Since we don't have that many employees in operation and we weren't shut down at all, that doesn't directly apply to us, but we're still going to follow that because it's good practice. Having that plan will help us make sure that our employees are safe and help provide clarity for our employees about what to do if they're in a situation that isn't safe, or what to do if they come in contact with somebody who is sick, and how to proceed. One of the requirements that we are subject to, that we're working on, is we have to improve the way that we're doing our daily check-ins. So that every employee is required to check in every day about, do you have any of the major symptoms? And we are going to be required to take people's temperature somehow with part of that daily check-in. The procedure for that, we're still working on a little bit. It's not something that I'm really eager about, taking people's temperature. It's not likely to be considered a health record, but it's still, closer to a health record than I really want to record for our employees. But so what we're thinking about for that would be providing the employee with a thermometer that they can take their own temperature and then tell us if they have a fever or not. But they will have to take their temperature at work. They can't take it at home and then tell us whether they had a fever. They have to do it at work. So we'll have to provide thermometers for them to do that. We've looked at a couple different options of no contact thermometers and also low contact. Like the no contact are, you can point it at your forehead and it can make a reading. The light contact ones are, you have to place a sensor on your head in order for it to take a reading, but you don't have to put it in your mouth or put it in your ear or anything else in order to get a reading. I'm fine with either one of those. Even with a light contact, we'd want to wipe it with alcohol in between each use, but that should be manageable. My biggest concerns when shopping for something like this right now is fraud and abuse. I'm worried about paying too much for these instruments and the horror stories about these instruments out there that don't work, that are fraudulent for one reason or another. So I want to stick with a name brand and try and keep the price down as much as possible. I've been talking with our kind of core response team about getting that together, and I expect we'll make a purchase for that and get that updated. I've created a form for making those recordings that's very bare bones. But again, I think I don't want to record a lot of information. I just want a record that we performed a check-in, and that's, to my mind, that's kind of all we want. I spoke to a couple of other municipalities today about this, and we're all doing about the same procedure on this. The requirement is that we have to make an order for thermometers soon. But they're really hard to come by. So there's, if we can show proof that we're trying to get it, we'll get consideration. So I think that covers workplace pretty well. Yeah, in the office, we're working from home as much as possible. I think it's going to come through the village at some point, but there is some interest in trying to, whether, if you recall, we're spending a little bit of extra money on Nemrick right now to get Nemrick's cloud services. Switching over to the Nemrick's cloud services required a lot of the software and hardware that the village uses for bills to get updates, and that it's not compatible between the, it's not compatible between the old version of Nemrick and the cloud version of Nemrick. And so they've now got everything working on the cloud version of Nemrick, and it's going to be a real challenge for them if we switch back. So I expect that to come up kind of through the proper channels, but that request is brewing, and we can expect to have that at some point. And in the office, we're open by appointment for researchers. There hasn't been a lot of use for that yet. I had said that there were probably, I believe, 3 researchers that took advantage of it last week. And I'm not really expecting any more this week. Rosemary, if I can unmute you. Rose, I've been out of the office mostly, working more from home. So Rosemary, do you have any other updates from inside the office?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Right now we have 1 researcher scheduled for Wednesday, and maybe another one, but that's all that I know about.
Good.
And we've all done our taken that course. We got our certificates.
Have all the select board members done this?
Yep.
No,
I've done it, but I couldn't figure out how to get the certificate.
You're gonna have to do it over again.
I'm gonna slide the thing to 15 minutes.
Yeah,
this whole thing's starting to get out of control.
it's a VOSHA requirement.
Yeah,
You gotta
Mike,
do
you're
it.
going to have to complete that training also.
It's super simple, and it's actually
Even a caveman could do it, huh?
Yeah,
even a caveman.
It would be useful to a caveman.
with a white beard.
I shaved it all off this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Did, Brian, did you see the note that Greg sent on the?
Yeah, he was able to get some thermometers from Fairfax. I'll follow up with that. I'd feel a lot better if I could buy them in person than if I had to order them. I'm really leery of ordering. If you go search for, no contact thermometer online now, you'll get tons of results from manufacturers you've never heard of and websites you've never heard of. So that's difficult to navigate. And lots of them promising, fast shipping and these other things. So it's tough. That's why I'm thinking some of the ones I sent out to the core team were name brand ones from places like Amazon and Walmart, where we can have a reasonable expectation of who's selling it and what it is.
You're going to have to unmute Kyle again.
Oh, yeah.
She got pushed
Okay,
off.
there you go, Kyle.
Thank you.
Good grief, before this happened on Amazon, you could get a good one for like $12, believe it or not. And I have one right in my toolbox that I use to pick out a bad bearing in my vehicles if I've got one going. So What are they charging for those now, Brian?
I saw one that was a Braun no contact thermometer. So, a decently nice one, but it was $250.
Get out of here. Wow.
They're regularly between $50 and $100.
I got one for $12, and I bet it's within a fraction of a degree one way or another.
Yeah. I mentioned on our conference call this morning that I have one for beer brewing. That's an infrared thermometer. I checked the accuracy on it, and it isn't as accurate as a medical thermometer. But yeah, I paid about $20 for that. So we're looking for them. We've got to place an order relatively soon. There's some that I like the look of that are, closer to the $50. I think one that I sent this evening was $55. They're not that cheap, but they're not that expensive. I know some of the other ones that I had seen links going around for were, what was that, $120 and $80? But yeah, it's not going to be too cheap, but I'll talk to Greg and see what he's got, but we'll follow up after this. We should have one for each location. So that's the town office, the library, and the town garage. The one for the town office, that's share or whatever between us and the village. We don't need to, quibble over that too much, but we will want one for each work site, and we definitely want either the no contact, or like I said, I'm okay with the low contact.
I'd prefer the no contact if we're able to get them.
Yeah.
Then there's no question of you're touching two people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, the no contact is definitely preferable.
Yeah.
So we'll invest a little bit more effort, but I want to get that ordered in the next couple of days so that we can have that forgiveness on, if we do get an inspection asking about it.
I think do it.
In terms of, the thermometers that you put in your mouth or anything like that, we don't have the, I don't want to get into anything where it carries a high risk of cross-contamination.
Okay, anything else on that? I think you hit about all the high notes.
Yeah, I think I hit everything that's specifically town business related to COVID-19. I guess the economic update, there's a little bit more money in the Paycheck Protection Program. So local businesses are encouraged to seek out loans again through the banks. If you have questions about that or need help, your real assistance is probably going to come from John Mandeville at LEDC, but I can try and help out also. But that's going to be it's going to end up in a bank loan. I have done a little bit more research on funding options that are going to be available to the town. There is a FEMA disaster recovery program that the state treasurer is interested in opening up contact for. So this would not come in the form of a disaster assistance loan that we're currently eligible for. This will be another program that will be administered by the state that they are considering opening up. It's a loan program, but there is a path to forgiveness. The downside is the path to forgiveness for the loan is that it's a loan that we would request the loan for lost revenue. So if we could make the loan application for things that aren't coming in for one reason or another, like the decrease that we're likely to see in the pilot program. In order for the loan to be forgiven, what we need to show is 3 years of losses from that program over a 5-year period. So that is difficult to show for that program. So we're going to want to get a little bit more information about it before we fully commit to that or not. But it's good to know that if we have to seek loans regardless to make up short term, like our first quarter of the new year, this might be a really good program to go for a short term loan for that first quarter, because if we need to extend it out, it does have a path to forgiveness, which a different kind of revenue or tax anticipation loan would not have any path to forgiveness. So I'm pretty interested in that program, and I'm going to be following that. But Treasurer Beth Pierce at the state is interested in it and knows that we're among those who are interested in finding out more.
Good.
So I think that's all of the town business related to COVID-19.
Anybody got any questions? If not, and you're not seeing any questions from anyone outside, are you?
No, I got a couple comments about thermometers. Walter, I'll follow up with you and Greg about a little bit more detail about the ones you've got and checking them out. I was also going to just drive up to CVS tomorrow and see what I could find on the shelf. You know, again, I have a lot more confidence in ones that I can
Might
lay
be locally.
I'm worried about fraud, mainly when I'm ordering these online.
Yeah. Okay. MVU update.
Okay. So for NVU, we have kind of crossed what's hopefully going to be our lowest point in our saga with NVU and the future of the university. But we are not done with anything. There's still a lot more work to do. And we should be looking at kind of the town's role in this. And I've got a couple places to go with this. One chief one is Nat's suggestion about, Randolph had sent out a pretty detailed letter that was co-signed by a number of outside groups that brought up what they're doing and the impact to their community about the technical college. And the suggestion is we should look at doing something similar for Johnson and the surrounding area and the contribution that the college has for our area. I think it's great. And do we want to be a clearinghouse for this? Do we want to cast a wider net, ask LCPC to be kind of the clearinghouse for this? Where do we?
What do you mean by clearinghouse?
Kind of somebody's got to actually write the letter and then seek endorsements for it. That's something that we can do, and we'd be appropriate if we wanted to seek, specifically Johnson.
Yeah.
But somebody's also got to have all of the information too. And that may be an LCPC or LEDC type of people.
Well,
if it's housed with us and I'm writing it, I'm going to seek for a lot of assistance, research assistance from LEDC and LCPC.
Right.
yeah, I mean, don't reinvent the wheel. Leah Hollenberger has a lot of that information compiled and at the ready for us. And she's, I don't know if you've seen your email in the last little bit, Brian, but we've got an email from her with a lot of that information. I'd also, just in anticipation of this conversation and realizing the workload that you have, I'd talked to Beth Foy about her perhaps helping us with this process. Paul Warden from our Town Planning Commission has offered his help and potentially the help of our Town Planning Commission. So there are a lot of those resources there already. I don't know if you can, if you wanted to spearhead that, or if you wanted to delegate it to someone else. But I also think that this is something that should happen fairly quickly. Like, and I don't know what's realistic, but if we could have it in a week, that would be, I think, really helpful.
I agree. I would really like to see, you know, it might take us a little bit longer to get endorsements, but I'd like to have a letter that we can send out and seek endorsements. Ideally, I'd like to have that letter by like Wednesday if we could. And then have a few days so that a week from today we could send it in. But I'd like to be seeking endorsements this week.
We need to move while it's still hot down at the legislature, or they'll move on to something else.
Yeah. I would be very enthusiastic about getting Beth's help for putting this together. I don't know what her work schedule is like for the next couple of days.
Keep her on mute so she can't object.
Yeah. So running counter to Nat's very good advice here, Beth, I'm unmuting you.
No.
But yeah, so like I said, I would really appreciate your assistance on this, especially being able to achieve that really fast turnaround.
Yep, I'm happy to help. I have ideas that, you know, we've all been talking about and some notes on those ideas. So I don't mind putting a draft together. You know, I am working, so I am working full time. So I would be working around my work schedule, but I don't think that's an issue. I'm not going anywhere else. So I'd be happy to.
Great. Then yeah, so we'll have a little bit of back and forth about getting the letter together, and then we'll start seeking endorsements of trying to get as many people to sign on as we can.
Yeah, and Brian, do call on us to help with endorsements, you know, getting that word out or reaching out to our circles.
Yeah, I absolutely will. You know, I heard I'd sent out a request for a few folks to ask if they wanted to attend. And one of the comments I got back from Leah that I want to share with you, I don't know if you were copied, but the NVU to create the NVU Strong Advisory Committee. NVU is seeking nominations for someone to serve on the NVU Strong Advisory Committee, which would be a university-led group about how to tackle this and how to make it sustainable over the long term.
Yeah, again, I'm recommending Beth Foy for that. And I know that other people have as well.
Good.
Some asked my permission and some did not.
I asked.
Not asked.
You know, a possible other good one would be Peggy Williams.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Good thought.
That's a really good one.
For the board, do we want to put
her in.
forward maybe Peggy?
Peggy and Beth, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a 17-member board.
All right. Kim has asked to weigh in, so I'm going to unmute her. Okay, go ahead, Kim.
Hey, I just wanted to say, I feel like the more letters, the better, versus having one that a lot of people sign. I feel like having different entities, the town, the village, the planning commission, the business community, in my mind, it seems like the more people they hear from, the more impact it would have.
I think that that's also true, and I don't think that this is meant to take the place of individual letter writing. That this is more in addition to individuals writing. The letter from Randolph was more detailed than a lot of individuals would necessarily would put together on their own. So this is kind of fitting into a different niche, but we 100% still encourage people to write to the legislature, to write to their state representatives, their federal representatives. Let your friends in other communities know what's going on and encourage them to write to their local representatives. That's going to be one of the most effective tools, is if we can get representatives in other parts of the state to start hearing from their constituents about how important this is. That can sway a lot of opinions.
Well, what we could do along the same thread of what Kim's saying is if we did all the legwork and wrote up the note, the letter to send, and then just gave it to these others, the village, the planning commissions, the LCPC, gave them the letter and say, okay, tweak it to fit your own organization, but here's all the guts of it. All you got to do is sign the bottom. That way you could probably get a letter out of them. But if we just asked them each to come up with their own, like what we're going to do, they probably wouldn't.
Well, a lot of them have already. LCPC, LEDC.
Yeah, they have.
Others on the list have. This is, the Randolph letter. I almost want to plagiarize it, but I don't, because ours would be very unique to the economic benefits of this area, but which are very different from VTC. But how they phrased this was a message of consolidated action by economic stakeholders to the Board of Trustees. And I agree with Brian that this is a demonstration that of the larger community impact, and that we are organized as a larger community and aware of it, as well as the individual entities sending letters, town, village, Studio Center, Blair Way, Vermont Electric Co-op, etc.
I think it's a good point, Nat. Do you have copies of those letters that were sent by the other entities?
No.
I mean, then the other question I would have is, do the other entities want to have a consolidated letter of action? Because there could be two letters that stem from the select board, right? One could be the select board letter about impact to the town. The other could be about the consolidated action for all these different entities within the community. And if that were the case, I would want to make sure that we're using like pieces from those other letters that have been sent or compiled.
Right.
So I guess the question is, what should the intent be?
I think the intent should be to plagiarize as applicable to Johnson, the letter for Vermont Tech. It just seems to me that that was really well done, and it fits into if you're going to, on one hand you're running a university, on the other hand you are an agency of commerce and community development program. That's the agency of commerce and community development program. That's the investment in rural Vermont that needs to be highlighted, and why to do it.
So I think I'm unmuted. Thank you, Brian. This is Scott, not Kim. As I'm putting on my trustee's hat, and I'm wondering, and again, I know getting this out as fast as possible is, our goal. If we should do a joint project with the village and the town, of course, got to go through the government process on that one. But Meredith is already documenting revenue losses with power, the potable water system, and the sewer system. I mean, we're seeing real-time revenue loss. So for Beth, I think you've been picked. And, it's up to the town select board to decide the overall capture on data. But I'm just tossing that out there. I mean, the village can do their own, but I'm just wondering if it would have a little bit more,
Clout.
a little bit more clout showing actual, thank you, showing actual revenue loss due to the closure. So
The village should be included in it.
Yeah. We just want to make sure we keep this rolling quickly, and Brian, Beth, whoever can be reaching out to Meredith and getting those data points.
Yeah. I mean, so from that perspective, I don't know about the whole process for
We're all in this together.
approval.
Y'all certainly.
Yeah, sorry, Eric.
No, go ahead.
I don't know the whole process for the village approval and what path that would need to take, but I'm happy to draft something, fill in the blanks. Like, I don't know what to put here for data points, but fill in the blank kind of a thing and send it to both Meredith and Brian, and, just trust that they'll work together to fill those data points in. And then also hope maybe, Scott, you could broach the topic with the village or however that works, and leave it to the boards to take care of that piece. But I'm happy to draft in a way that does leave those blanks in there, and if paragraphs need to be removed because we decide it doesn't fit, that's totally fine with me.
Yeah, I think, not speaking for the village too much, but they do have a meeting coming up this coming Monday. So I think, Meredith will have to kind of weigh the direction she's been given from her board, how much work she can devote to this in the meantime. But we can share it with her in its draft form, and then, the goal was to have it done in the next couple of days as something that people can endorse or not. They meet on Monday, they can endorse it or not, and then that leaves us early next week for being able to send it out. So, yeah, they'll have to do it. Well, they'll meet again, and they won't have to kind of approve it sight unseen, which, the select board will have to trust in our ability to write this and represent the town well. But the select board won't meet again in a timely fashion.
We don't want to wait for another meeting. Even if you wait until the trustees meeting next Monday, you're talking 3 weeks out from when the big splash was. Well, my God, Randolph has already come up with their letter and sent it out.
Yep.
Way behind the 8 ball here. So we don't want to waste time on this, but need to get it going quick.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we want to wait any more on this. For the village, it just might be that I think it'll take us a couple days to get everybody to sign off on it anyway. So I think sending it out early next week is kind of the most realistic. But if we get a lot of endorsements, I'm seeing Scott in chat. I think if we get a lot of endorsements, maybe we can send it out early or later this week. But I think that having the letter written and getting endorsements for it, I think a week's time to put all that together is a fairly realistic turnaround. Maybe we can do it faster, but
not more than a week.
Not more than a week, no.
And I can safely say that no trustee would tell Meredith not to work on this, or they would lose re-election.
Yeah, so I'll work on it with Beth in the next couple days. We'll have something written and then we'll circulate that for endorsements. And we'll kind of play it by ear. If we feel like we've got good endorsements, maybe we can send it out on Thursday or Friday. If people take a little bit of time to get back to us, we might be waiting until sending it out on Monday anyway.
Yep.
Are you circulating it for only endorsements, or are you circulating it for, do you have a specific, you have a salient point that you want included?
I mean, we'll add a couple things to it, but I think we have to limit the rewrites on it, because I'm thinking we get it more or less written, maybe a little bit of editing, but then we're going to blast it out to a bunch of people all at once. We're not going to have a lot of time for the college wants one thing included, and the studio center wants one thing included, and the co-op wants one thing included. And then we make those changes and then we send it all back out to everybody, and one group doesn't agree with what somebody else has said. I think there's a real pitfall for us kind of going too far with input and conversation on this. I want us to write something and then endorse it or don't.
I have a question about the process. So we do things like this at work a lot, where we have multiple people who need to contribute to something that needs to go out quickly. And we just have a document shared in a location that can be edited by multiple people. We use a different tool that you guys don't have access to, but we could use something like a Google Docs where we open it up to people who've been invited to the document, and you can look at it at any time during the draft process, add your comments, edit, but have a strict deadline of, we're closing this down at 9 o'clock on Tuesday. So it doesn't have the delay of going back and forth in email multiple times. Instead, it's real time. You're seeing real edits and you can make comments real time. So I don't know how that plays into, I don't think it plays into open meeting law, because there's never a quorum, because you never have multiple people on the board, or you don't have too many people from the board in the document at the same time. I think you'd be safe in that regard. But I don't know if that's something that we could use or explore.
I think we'd be good for that. I am leery about, we could violate open meetings time shifting, so that if all board members can contribute things, even if they're not on all at once making contributions.
No, I don't think board members should be on it. You should be representing us, but
Okay.
not board.
I agree. I think that's how we
Okay.
avoid any conflict with open meetings is if I go on to represent the town,
Yeah.
and I can reach out to board members for a few things, but if it's, I think we'll trip ourselves up if we have board members accessing the document and writing in the document.
Okay.
So,
You should just have LCPC, the college, you, Brian, Beth, Laraway, all these people, the stakeholders. They spoke about their industries coming in, and they gathered their information. It's not only how fast you get, it's what's in it too. And I think Beth's suggestion is really substantive and would help with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Beth. I think that totally takes care of my concerns with getting input on the document. I just didn't want the time delay, but you're right. Using Google Docs or something is going to fix that. And
you might want to loop Kyle in because of her role as president of Johnson Works.
Yes.
So just point of clarification, how I'm envisioning this, and it doesn't have to be there, but how I'm envisioning this is that this is a letter from the town to the Board of Trustees and CC'd to a lot of important people. So getting all of that sort of buy-in from stakeholders isn't to get them to sign off on a finished letter, but to contribute information as to what the full economic impact of NVU is on the region.
So in other words, it's part of the data gathering, not part of the put your name on this.
Right.
That's how I envision it. That's exactly in the mold of the Randolph letter.
Yeah, that's how they did it. I saw it a little bit differently in the, I was looking to have endorsements for this, that it's from the town of Johnson, but, sent with support of, all these different organizations that we can round up.
It's from the community, not from a particular entity.
Well, it's from the town of Johnson.
It's from the town, but it's the town representing our interests.
Right.
How about you use the language that it's from the town, but the other entities are concurring?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that gets back to buy-in. So that goes back to Nat's point earlier, that you don't want everyone to have, so it gets back to everyone's point. Actually, everyone's already made this point. I think a lot of people have. You don't want everyone to be reviewing what everyone else has said and saying they agree or not with what everyone else said. You just want to know what the impact to that particular company is, or to that particular business is, or organization, or whatever. You just want to know what the immediate impact is to that area, and use that to form the letter to talk about what the impact to Johnson community is from the town of Johnson, I think is what the intent is, right?
That's how I see it.
I was thinking more of getting them to say that they do support our letter.
I just think
okay, what purpose does that serve?
So that when we write this letter, they don't necessarily have to say that they support it, but that we can say that we're writing this with the support of, or organizations X, Y, and Z.
But we're trying to make a case, I think. I mean, I think the point is that the letter makes the case, and a letter should make the case of, if we close NVU, what is the impact to our community? And it doesn't matter. I mean, frankly, if I was on the VSC board and I read a letter that said that Smugglers Notch supports Town of Johnson's message, I would think, who cares? Like, I don't care if Smugs supports Johnson's message. I care what the impact of 2 Smugs is by closing this school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The distinction between the two?
I do, and yeah, I think your point, you're a little more to the point on that. I'm thinking that
I've been given that feedback.
Well, I'm thinking that I'd like to have, that we want to have that data and everything from them.
Mm-hmm.
Mike?
And I also want that we represent them in this case.
Why do we always have to make things so complicated? Really, it's always the way. Just put forth a letter, and just like Beth says, who cares if they agree with it? If you wait for everybody to agree on it, it will never get sent out.
And nobody's going to disagree with it.
Exactly.
Good.
I'd like to say that, we may be the town of Johnson sending this, but I think we need to talk about region-wide impact.
Exactly. That's what Beth just said.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay, so you guys are going to start on this?
Yes.
Perfect.
And Greg's got some great input in the comments too about other stakeholders, Smugs, Stowe, Jenna's Promise. So it's good input.
LC Kim has asked in the comments about LCPC, and we have been talking to them a little bit Leah Kavadieva was on it earlier, but she was not able to stick around. But yeah, they're looped in on this. They have the LCPC has written their own statement. But yeah, we're gonna. Oh, there you are.
I see Leah.
I'm gonna go ahead and unmute.
Yes, Brian is right. Our board has already formed a resolution and agreed on it and sent off. I would say that if you are on a very short timeline, I would suggest that as you've been discussing, you write the letter for the town of Johnson and then share it with all the partners we would like to share it with, and encourage them to send their own responses in support of the letter if they are so inclined. And that would allow you to send this out by the end of the week.
Right. And that would increase the volume of letters too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would assume that we would want to send it to more than just the board. I mean, my assumption is that we want to send it to the governor's office, to our representatives, to the board, probably maybe even to some of the agencies that we feel have an impact, like Secretary Curley's agency, the Economic Development.
Yeah, I agree. Also, they have a pretty good copy list on the Randolph letter, and this is something we should absolutely lift wholesale from them.
Yep.
You know, the governor's office, the Senator Pro Tem, Speaker of the House, their own representatives, you know,
yep.
Other influential people who are going to be dealing with this.
Peter Ash, Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah.
Governor. Yeah. The whole slate.
Yep.
Okay. Are we good with this to move it?
I'm good.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who's involved.
Thank you, everyone.
Good idea, Nat. Light industrial park.
Wasn't really my idea.
But it wasn't?
Well, I brought it to you. But I can't take credit for it.
You're not a credit manager.
Industrial park update. This is still moving forward. We've gotten some feedback on some additional research that the Economic Development Authority wants. So we are slowed down a little bit, but I was speaking to Seth last week, and we're finishing up the research that they want and making the application, continuing our progress.
So this hasn't gotten delayed any by the COVID-19?
I would say that it's been delayed some. I think if it was not for this, our research and the questions we would have gotten that feedback sooner, and we would have processed it and dealt with it sooner. I think that this is not being backburnered by anybody, but it is taking a little bit more time than it would have if we were not in the middle of a pandemic.
And when is the grant application review complete?
It will be complete in a few months of our final submission date. Again, we're working on with a rolling submission date, and we're working pretty closely with the agency to get, you know, we can't actually get clearance before, but the idea is that we're working pretty closely with them so that there should not be any outstanding questions, that when we make the application, it should have pretty smooth sailing.
So 6 months from now or a year from now, we'll know?
I hope 6 months from now, or 6 months, 6 months from a couple weeks from now is pretty realistic.
Good. Okay.
Brian, it looks like Scott had a question.
Community event. Okay, I'm unmuting you, Scott. It's taking a second to take effect. There we go.
Hi there, everybody. I think it was already dealt with. It was just Meredith's data. that she has, and the village, I guess, will do its own.
Well, I think that we're going to seek some data from Meredith, but hopefully we're not actually going to wait for the village trustees to approve it.
Yeah.
Everything goes well, Meredith can provide some data to our letter, but it won't be, it sounds like we're not sending this on behalf of anybody other than the town.
Right. Yeah. I just think it's pretty nice because it's real-time data showing an impact. And
Yeah.
it's dollars, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, the numbers that I've seen from Meredith are powerful so far. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I was gonna add. Thanks.
Okay, good.
What I got showing is Doug wanted to bring up about broadband for discussion.
Maybe I could hand this off to Leah, who is the prime mover in this. And I would say that she has invited a phone video meeting for next Wednesday to discuss interest in a communication union district, and she might be able to give background as to why.
Sure. I'm still awake. And you all are, so I'll try to keep it brief. I have been seeing a lot of activity over the past 2 months on the level of House of Representatives as well as Vermont Senate, holding various public hearings and taking testimony on broadband issues. They've talked to the utilities, they've talked to the existing communications union districts, and at pretty much every conversation, they had Commissioner Tierney from the Public Service Department, as well as her staff present. The discussion is around a pretty deep analysis of what resources are coming into state as part of the COVID-19 crisis for broadband, but also what resources are available for infrastructure build out pre-COVID, and even looking post this immediate period of the resources that we are already aware of, and creating a state emergency broadband plan. That plan should be finalized by May 7th, but I really think that it's a nice and comprehensive effort that would engage our towns on a town by town basis. And what I mean by that is looking for a comprehensive solution to the town area within its boundaries, rather than what we've seen so far was a solution for some, but leaving others behind. I've also come to understand that this creation that the legislators supported last year, I believe, through Act 79, and that is enabling the creation of these municipal districts called communications union districts to be the lead entity on building the broadband infrastructure. I feel that this is something that the state really wants to help succeed. They encourage the creation of entities that are volunteer-based and that are a little bit struggling with getting off the ground, but also at the same time making a headway. And as this planning for the development of the broadband build-out proceeds, communications union districts are going to be one of the key players to which the state is going to be turning to for opinions about the build out of the broadband infrastructure. I'm also seeing that those communications union districts that are created are at the table. They're talking to the House and the Senate representatives and to the state staff, and really being privy to what I see the most development and most information that is out there for supporting broadband. We have been working with 7 towns in Lamoille County, including Johnson, for the past 9 months now, in the realm of what I would call community engagement and awareness. And I feel that we are at a point that we really need to seriously look at the question of whether there is an interest in creating a communications union district in Lamoille. I'm not going to say county because we don't have all the towns involved, but in our Lamoille area. In the statute, the creation of such a district right now is that there have to be at least 2 towns that have to vote at town meeting or a special town meeting to establish the district. Other towns that are interested in joining can then join by the vote of select board. So next Wednesday on May 13th at 5:30 p.m., I am organizing a Zoom conversation with my contacts in all 7 towns, and you are welcome to join in. Doug has the meeting information as well as Charles, to see what the appetite is, what the potential concerns might be, and what the questions are. The immediate one being, is it even possible to hold a special town meeting these days? We are talking to, as well as some of our legislators offered help. It's been recommended to us that we talk to the Attorney General office for an interpretation of how the changes to the open meeting law could make a special town meeting in these times possible. That's the introduction, and if all goes well and there is general support, we might try to go ahead. We'll see.
Thank you, Leah. Anybody got any questions? Or Doug, you have more to add?
I saw Nat had a hand up.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're talking about building creating a Lamoille district. There'd been conversation before about potentially joining a neighboring district. Is that
That's
possible?
also an option. We have, frankly, at this time, I am not sure which one is better. We are adjacent to the newly created Northeast Kingdom district, which is fairly large at this point. I think it's about 27 towns.
And
we are also, pardon?
And we're touching one of them?
We are touching 2 of them because actually our Lamoille town of Elmore is part of the Central Vermont CUD, and Wolcott and Eden are touching the Northeast Kingdom CUD. So that's a possibility. So that's a valid question to ask, good to explore. There are pros and cons to each. What I would say that we are also seeking this response. You have supported us in submitting a broadband innovation grant application. That's a feasibility study and a business plan for the 7-town area. We are going to hear the decision on Thursday whether we have been funded. And we have partnered, if we are funded, we have partnered with Tilson, which is a significant consulting firm in the broadband business, to explore precisely that question. So again, should we wait until that, or can we create? I don't think there is a good response. I do think that if we act on something now, we'll get a seat at the table. And if ours might prove that it is too small to be viable, then there is always a possibility to restructure and join somebody else. However, before we join, we would be having, my vision is to keep making headway with design plans for this infrastructure, with engineering plans, so that we are as shovel ready as possible when the money becomes available, regardless whether it's our own Lamoille area district or in conjunction with somebody else.
Charlie, you got your hand up?
I do. A couple of things. The special town meeting is certainly an issue, but there's another deadline. I think it's in May that the Communication Union District has to be formed by, I believe, May 25th. It's a kind of a drop dead date in the legislation. So I don't know how you'd have two towns have a town meeting between now and May 25th to make a decision to form a CUD. It's a good, it's certainly something to explore. We've talked about it. There's pros and cons. I would not suggest joining the Northeast Kingdom with its 27 members, because each town gets 2 representatives to their board. That's 54 people at a board meeting. And from what we've heard from other CUDs, that was probably unmanageable. We need the critical mass for getting a ISP, an internet service provider, is about 1,000 subscribers. We have a potential of about 300. So we could not go alone and find someone to service us by just Johnson. In terms of what the legislature is considering, I've asked everyone to write letters to the Senate Finance Committee, who are doing the hearings at this time because they have oversight of utilities. And we don't want just broadband, we want fiber to the home. Comcast is broadband, but they are not fiber to the home. Consolidated does offer fiber to the home in some locations, but not currently in this area. The Senate Finance Committee is considering funding projects that are essentially shovel-ready using CARES Act money, but those jobs have to be completed by the end of the year. And a couple of issues there. One, we don't have anything that can be completed by the end of the year. And two, as Governor Scott pointed out, Vermont has $1.2 billion of COVID money, or CARES Act money coming in, and about $4 billion of ways to spend it. So whether broadband would be at the top of the list, would be even on the list of where the money would go, is problematic at best. The Congress, the federal Congress, is considering infrastructure bills, but they are not making any progress. They can't, Greg would know this, they can't even fund the highway construction. Come to agreement on highway funding, which is usually fairly straightforward. The infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, has been tied up in Congress for a long, long time. Now, if we get $1 billion infrastructure bill, there's a potential that we could, get fiber to the home to the last mile. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Charlie.
I would just briefly add that I agree with what Charles said. I would say that without having a governing entity in place, we are losing out. So we really need to think about how to accomplish this somehow, sooner rather than later. And I would also say that my goal for the LCPC would be to be in a position to support this newly formed organization in getting organized and helping with fundraising. So that would be my goal, is just to be there. And because that's what we're doing right now, but there's only so far we can go as a non-municipal entity. And then there needs to be that we can support going forward.
Yeah, I don't think I've said anything that would poo-poo working. I'm really curious about whether the grant gets funded on the 7th. That would be a very significant step, either in the way forward or falling back and regrouping. So we'll know on May 7th whether LCPC has the money to go ahead and plan. And then we meet on May 13th to talk about it.
Anyone else?
I would just like to say that if you aren't developed and ready, you aren't going to be able to take care of the opportunities that might present themselves.
Yeah.
I'd like to invite, the purpose of asking to have this on the agenda was to alert the citizens, the people here, and the select board to please sit in on this meeting. It's a long line of importance of having NVU here, broadband, fiber to the home.
Brian or somebody, will you send that information out to us?
Yes. I'll post that on the town Facebook and Front Porch Forum too, with your permission, Leah.
I think that's fine. I would also like to stress that I would like to keep that meeting manageable. So my initial invite was to a couple of folks from each town. I would certainly love select board participation, because in the end, if we decide to go forward, you will be the decision makers on making, if it's a special town meeting happen or whatnot. So my goal would be try to make this meeting manageable. If we could, I guess my priority would be to stagger. If we could have a smaller meeting on the 13th, and then if the community desires a bigger meeting on the topic, I would be quite happy to host a community by community specific meeting, which probably will have to happen anyway if this is to move forward.
Okay. So we'll start a little bit smaller than that, with the select board and the broadband committee.
Right.
For the upcoming meeting, and then if it goes well and we're serious about it, we'll expand it out to a wider community involvement.
I'll take care of notifying the broadband committee.
Thank you.
Fiber to the home committee.
Yeah, fiber to the home.
Leah had mentioned to me that with regard to the COVID-19 and the issue of the town meeting, that it might be appropriate. Tasha Wallace had suggested that perhaps the legislature could move that type of a decision into the select board's hands and not require a full town meeting.
Yeah, if that was the quickest pathway, I'm not sure whether that's the quickest pathway.
Mm-hmm.
But
so with the May 25th deadline, it is.
Yeah.
They've been doing some other things down there that they never did before.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Looks like in chat, Kim or Scott has a question about, wouldn't it be easier to join a neighboring CUD that's already set up? So can you talk a little bit more about the challenges about joining one? Charles, you mentioned the manageability if we join something like the
Northeast Kingdom CUD is has 27 members, and it's unmanageable. From listening to other CUDs and their experiences with large boards, 54 plus we join and the neighboring towns join. The central Vermont, CUDs don't have to be contiguous. We can hook up with any CUD. So yes, it's a possibility to join another CUD. I guess, so getting back to Leah's point, we'd have to decide we want to be part of a CUD.
Yeah.
There are pros and cons.
Yeah, that's something that I would like to follow up on, May 13th with. It would be an option.
Yeah.
May 13th, 17th, 13th.
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 Yeah, and to put my own opinion in there, my impression when we were talking to people at one of our last big meetings to describe the CUDs and some of that, it sounded to me like they were having a fair amount of trouble meeting and rolling out to all of the towns that were already a part of their CUD. And us joining it wouldn't put us in that much better of a position in terms of when we would have rollout coming to Johnson.
I think you're referring to EC fiber, whatever it's called. They're wiring out their CUD step by step, and they haven't. It's not going to happen that everybody gets wired the same day. It just doesn't work quite that way. There's going to be a lot of problems with actually rolling out fiber, whether we join the CUD or not. And that is a lack of technicians that actually work with fiber cable. And if everyone decides across the country that we want fiber today, there's going to be supply chain issues. So,
I would say that this is the type of development in broadband is that we're going to need to be adjusting on the go. There will always be factors that are either beyond our control, or we discover that maybe this is not, like our own CUD is a solution and we'll need to merge with somebody else. I'll mention one factor. At the end of the year, the federal government, the Federal Communications Commission, is going to be auctioning a lot of money to providers to improve broadband. I imagine that Consolidated is going to apply. I've had a little bit of a conversation with them about it, very general, where I mainly impressed upon them that if they were going to apply, that they should be looking at a full town solution, which they've acknowledged, and that our town would really appreciate it. But the point is that this auction is going to happen in October 2020, and because this information cannot be disclosed, we are absolutely clueless about whether they are applying, is Johnson included, what's going to happen. And whatever they apply for, and if they get the money for broadband build out in Lamoille, is going to influence our own effort. So this is going to be moving and fluid, and we just have to do something to begin with. And if we do, you may be able to see me better without white lines running over my 3 download, 1 upload megabits per second internet.
Oh, God.
Well, you do pretty good from up there on the hill.
Oh, yeah, it's, milking it. Nobody else online at this hour, if I had Zoom in the middle of the day.
Anyone else?
I do have one broadband issue that's a little bit different, and that's that the town's Wi-Fi thing, or whatever it's called, that operates in the town municipal building is not very powerful. People, we talked about hotspots, and the library is a decent hotspot, but the reports I get is that the municipal building is not a very good place to go to pick up internet. So you might want to upgrade your, I guess it's your server.
It would be our
I'm not a
Wi-Fi
techie.
access point. And yeah, it's not great. We do get people coming and using it from time to time, but
The public service department is gathering information about where they might be able to help with establishing hotspot. It first started in communities where there was absolutely no hotspot available, and we just learned that last Wednesday they've installed one in Belvedere. Now the department's effort is rolling out to all towns and all locations. I've heard about a plan of hiring regional planning commissions to ground-proof the functionality of these hotspots that are, out there. An easiest way to try to do something about it would be to simply shoot a message to Rob Fish, the public service department, and send him just exactly what Charles said. We do have this hotspot. It's reported as not being very good. Can anything be done about it? And you might be able to get one by donation, including the work to be done.
that'd be great. Sounds good. I've got Rob's email, so yeah, I'll get a hold of Rob Fish.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
if you want to CC me, if I'll push if I can, or facilitate if I can.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Whether it's helpful or not, this week's Friday night Zoom featured speaker will be Congressman Welch, so it might be a good topic to bring up with him again. If there's any help financially from the feds.
Oh yeah, and he's having, I think, on Vermont Edition tomorrow. He's the key speaker, also
Okay.
on broadband.
Perfect. Then maybe some of you want to ask him about it Friday night.
Yeah.
Okay. If there's nothing else on that one, Doug wanted to talk about having meetings in the future via Zoom.
I just wanted to have it on our agenda that we've talked about it and we're going to consider it as being a valuable communication tool and expanding our reach.
Excellent idea.
When we started this, I wouldn't have never agreed with you and never thought I would, but what I do like about it is I can sit in on a trustee board meeting from my home and not have to travel over to the office. So from the spectator side, I certainly like the Zoom a lot better.
Okay.
But from the board perspective, I like being in the board meeting. It's easier to see what everybody's, doing and what, if they want to speak or what have you. Any other thoughts? Or any other items? Or is there anybody out there that wants to bring something up tonight that has not spoke or would like to speak?
You have to unmute them.
Volunteer Lois was asking how she could communicate. Can you unmute her and see if she can speak?
Yeah. Okay, Lois, you're unmuted.
Okay. You all did a great job tonight. Can you hear me say it?
Yes, we heard you.
All right.
You want to say it again?
You did a super great job. And it's wonderful to be able to participate this way. I just can't stick my hand up, so I have to wait till.
You never zoom in, you always call.
We gotta get you.
I'm on Zoom, I don't call.
Oh, okay. You just don't show us your face.
I don't have a camera.
Oh, okay.
So
I know you're a regular because I always see Volunteer Lois.
here I am. My headset came during your meeting that I had ordered.
Oh,
So now Bob and I can share the same room. I've had to boot him out.
Okay.
And it worked. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
I
Lois.
second Doug's. I understand your point, Eric, about liking to be at the same table with the board. Totally get that. But I really like being able to join from my house. And honestly, I'll join much more as long as they're remotely available.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we should go back to meeting in person and to have the public come in like this would be great. I think that it's a win-win.
Yep.
Yeah, and we bought some of the equipment when early on we thought we were going to need more of that video conferencing equipment before they just shut it all down and made us go to our separate homes. So we can take advantage of it. Also, I think that we'll be able to share some of the resources that GMATV has when they are able to resume filming us in person. So I think we'll be in a really good position to broadcast meetings online.
Do you think that the check we're getting weekly from Green Mountain Access will diminish if their Zoom becomes or the video becomes a competition with them?
I think that GMATV is also really enjoying the way that they're able to use online video.
Yeah, because they are recording us, and so they're re-showing what we, had for a meeting here numerous times.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have anything else they want to bring up? If
Sorry to interrupt. This is Michael from Green Mountain Access Television. I felt like you all were speaking to us. Yeah, just to be clear, there was a plan in place before COVID happened to.
Oh, you just got remuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so just wanted to be clear, there was a plan in place before most of COVID happened, and funds being moved around to make it more of a live experience and more accessible. But again, like most of the other issues you're speaking about tonight, broadband was one of the kinks in some of the equipment we were using, and so we were finding ways around that to reduce it and test it. But again, we're in the same situation as everyone else. So moving forward, if you continue to use Zoom, it's absolutely helpful. We can tap into that and we can amplify that and rebroadcast it as we are doing currently. But yeah, when the time comes, I think, to establish any changes, we can meet, or I can meet with Brian to go over what we had planned before all this happened. So yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Thank you guys up there for doing this too.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you all for making it happen and being so communicative with your community. Appreciate it.
Okay, anyone else? If not, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.